All right. Hello and welcome, class, to your second homework that we're gonna go into detail. So the reason we're doing questions number 11, 13, and 15 is because based on your feedback, that is what you guys need the most help with. So let me quick get into question 11. It's a disequilibrium. So you were basically asked to fill in the blank if the price will increase or decrease based on a shortage. And the answer is that the price must be lower than the equilibrium price. For the markets to reach equilibrium, you would expect buyers to offer higher prices. A good example of a shortage would be the shortage of toilet paper at the beginning of the pandemic. So imagine it's a free and unregulated market. The demand was so high. So as you can see here, the demand, that the quantity demanded is this Q2. So you go to price. So first of all, also there's no shift in demand or supply, just the quantity demanded, because it's a shortage, so it only affects the price. So the quantity demanded is way higher than the quantity supplied. Therefore, if the market were to reach equilibrium again, and let's say toilet paper were a unregulated market, the toilet paper producers would try to charge way higher prices and to put it back into this equilibrium. Okay, and now the second example is number 13. That's a bit more tricky. So you have to read. So we're in the market for pens. And so first of all, one of the substitutes to pens are pencils. And there the allergy to pencil erasers increased. So that this basically should show you that there will be a decrease in the demand of the substitute. A good example is like Coke and Pepsi of substitutes. If, for example, the price of Pepsi skyrockets, people will buy more Coke and vice versa, causing more students to switch from pencils to pens. So this should show you that the demand for pens will increase. On top of that, the price of ink, so a price of a component, will be cheaper. Therefore, we can produce way more pens for way less money. So basically the difference between scenario 1 and 2 are just that in this scenario 1, you see that the supply increased more. So here that's more than the demand. And in scenario 2, it's the demand that increased more. So I'm gonna just basically show you guys. I'm gonna quick draw the graph. So here, price and quantity. So this is the normal demand and supply before. And then in scenario 1, I'm gonna even draw it way more convincing. In scenario 1, let me look again, the supply increased way more. So that means, let's say this is a big shift in supply, and let's make this a different color. This is a big shift in supply and a very small shift in demand. So there you can see the new price would be lower. Oh, the new price would be lower and the quantity would increase. And also with the second example, let's say demand skyrocketed. Demand would be way higher and supply would be just a little bit higher. You see that the price increased, but also quantity. So what basically this question is telling you is that if both supply and demand increase, you can never know what happens to the price. So you see here, the price in both cases depends on if the supply shifts more, the demand shifts more. That could also be the case where basically the demand and supply shift as much that the price is unchanged, like in this case, pretty much. So this is the last chart, should help you to see what happens. And also the last question kind of asks you this, true or false, what the curve that shifts the smaller determines. So yeah.
Yeah, and so I'll go on number 15 for you guys here. Can you just zoom it in a little bit, Alex?
Yeah.
Appreciate it. All right, so for this one, basically, it's no more or less just information that Alex kind of already reiterated. Basically, we're talking about college town, and so these students are kind of debating what has caused this price increase, right? Has it been either the increase in the price of dough, which remember we call dough an input, or it's a factor of production, so it's an input cost. You need dough to make pizza because it's an ingredient for pizza. So there are so some of the students in this class are arguing that it was the increased price of dough that caused the supply curve to shift to the left. And others are arguing that, oh no, it's just because there's an increase in the college enrollment or there's an increase in enrollment at the university. So the demand curve has shifted to the right while the supply curve has stayed the same. So in the first example, the first group of students thinks the increase in the price of pizza is due to the fact that the price of dough, an important ingredient for making pizza, has increased. So this one just wanted to show you what would that look like. And basically, as I was saying, it would just be a supply shift to the left. So we know that dough is an ingredient in the production process of pizza. Um, since his input cost has risen, we know that I'm sorry, it's just going out a little bit on what I said. We know that it costs the supplier more, hence the supply curve shifts to the left because there are fewer pizzas supplied at each given price. So that's what you need to think is that when supply shifts to the left, in this case, fewer will be supplied at each given price than before. And so this is what it would look like if there was some sort of input cost that increased. So in this case, dough increased, so supply is going to shift to the left. So there's a change in ceteris paribus. And I also put in there as well that this isn't, remember, a change in the price. It's solely a change in ceteris paribus that has caused the decrease in supply, and not a change in the quantity, or excuse me, not a change in the price. So remember the difference between ceteris paribus and a change in price that's caused by a movement along the curve. Now in the second graph, it's kind of just the opposite. They just argued that there would be an increase in demand. So basically you're going to have a greater quantity supplied and a greater price because the supply curve is still staying the same. So it's basically like you have demand moving to the right. And so in this last one, it's basically asking you, so what was the what was the main cause? And so as Alex was talking about, sometimes you'll have an equal shift in both the supply and the demand, where in a sense, price is almost, price stays the same since they both moved in the exact same amount. So in this case, what we need to do is we need to figure out, okay, what happened to the quantity? Did the equilibrium quantity increase or did it decrease? And we know that if it increased, then this was caused by the demand because the demand shifted in a greater proportion than the supply shifted to the left. So there's no argument about the price, but we just want to see what was the main cause of this change in price. So in this case, and I took that quote exactly from MindTap, it says, therefore, if you know that the equilibrium quantity has decreased, so we know that the supply curve shifted to the left, the demand curve shifted to the right, but the supply curve shifted in a greater proportion than the demand curve shifted to the right, then the dominant cause of the price change must have been the decrease in the supply of pizzas, as shown by the supply shift dominates diagram. And if we knew that the equilibrium quantity increased, then it would be demand. And Dr. Manon Blankson, she uploaded, I think in the last slides that you guys watched on the lecture videos, she uploaded all of the different types of shifts in supply and shifts in demand. So I would really go back and encourage you guys to watch that because that gives a really good look at the differences in shifts. And
Yeah.
some shifts are ambiguous and some shifts, they like in the last case here can show the main cause.
Yeah, also about the shift thing, focus on not memorizing them, more like just know the causes and then kind
Right.
of do it on paper like I did. that and use intuition, use easy examples like I did, like with substitutes, use Coke and Pepsi, with complements, use cell phones and cell phone cases. Price of inputs is pretty explanatory. So try to use easy examples, and that's gonna make it way easier for you. And also with the shifts, like don't memorize the table, basically just use your brain and just draw like what I did, this little supply and demand, and do this, and then you can see if the price decreases, quantity increases, etc.
Right.
From
And I would completely agree with that. You don't want to solely memorize this. You don't want to memorize these shifts and, oh, well, this type of shift will cause this, or if quantity demanded is, greater than or if the shift in quantity is greater than the shift in supply, then, you're going to have this happen. I agree with Alex. It's easier to give yourself examples and to work that out, and that'll allow you to grasp these concepts a little better than just solely memorizing the shifts. So
okay, well, that was it for this week.
thank you.